Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 235. Today, Vic Teslin joins Mike Pekovich and myself, and we answer a couple of questions, but we just do a lot of woodworkers talking about woodworking, which is kind of what you're here for, I think. So it's an interesting show. The edit was kind of all over the place, just because I think we went for an hour and 45 minutes, and I desperately had to cut it down a little bit. Towards the end of the show, you'll hear a drop in audio quality, but the content's there. Somebody's recording shut off halfway through what they were saying. I'm not going to say who. But we make it through, and we pick it back up, and that's what's important. I want to let everyone know about a webinar that we have coming up. We have two webinars coming up actually soon. Back-to-back weeks. We're going to be hosting the gentleman from I2R CNC, and they're going to be showing us their latest and greatest CNC technology. It's a really, really impressive turnkey system. If you've been wanting to get into CNC and you're overwhelmed by everything and figuring out all the subtleties, they've kind of got it dialed in for you. So check that out. That's going to be March 11th at 7 p.m. And then the next week, we have Karen McBride on with us, and her shop was featured in the latest Tools and Shops issue. It's a beautiful log cabin, and she's going to tell you about her process of setting up the shop and what she went through to get it exactly to her liking. And I think it's one of those things that people are going to be able to learn a lot from and maybe daydream a little bit about what could be one day. All right, on with the show. Are you rolling, Vic? That's okay. There was part of it that was like, I could work this into the first part, but
right. Okay, it says it's recording. I've got levels jumping up and down.
Hey.
So
that's rolling, and I'm gonna incessantly ask. Are you still?
Yes,
rolling?
I've noticed you've been doing that. Are you recording? Are you still recording?
I actually cut two of them out last time. That's how many times I asked.
I feel like we could start a drinking game with you every time you say, "Are we rolling?" and every time Mike says, "I got a new book." You know what? It's the only reason I make fun of that is because if someone stands still, if anybody stands still long enough, I'm like, so you have another book coming out.
Oh, do you? Something like this.
Whoa! Look at that.
Yeah.
Wait, you got Vic?
What?
I don't have a book.
Mike, Vic said, here you go, Mike. Don't tell Ben, but here's my book.
Let's make this our little secret.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I see where the pecking order is here.
Yeah. The Pekovich order.
So,
I love that the cat comes into the shots all the time. If Bruno wasn't such a puppy, I'd be like trying to work him into a shot, but he's a fool.
Now that we're rolling, you had mentioned something, Vic, before, and it just made me think. You had said the sentence, well, if you want to use the router. Does anyone ever want to use a router? Or do you use it because you have to?
I think there are times when it makes the most amount of sense.
No. That's not the question. Are you like, yes, I get to use a router?
No. I don't think so. It's kind of like sanding. Like I don't mind sanding. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy sanding the way I enjoy hand planing.
I don't have a fear of sanding.
No, me neither.
But there's always like a little bit fear when the router comes out.
Oh yeah, and I think anybody who says they don't might be getting a little bit too a little bit too close to that tool and not really understanding how bad it can go. When I was a student, I watched somebody like just have too big of a gap in the fence, and the piece twisted on them, and their middle finger just went bang. It just hit the bit, but we're off to the hospital, right? Because and that's not like a chisel cut.
Yeah.
Right? That's like trying to pack hamburger back in.
Yes.
It's not the same. So,
Mike,
yeah.
You rarely, I don't think I've ever seen you use a router except to like trim off 1/16 of an inch bits here and there?
I use them. I tend to refer to them as a necessary evil because it is so enjoyable, but there are times it does the job so well that, do it. However, I do use it. I use a little trim router with a little bearing guided straight bit to clean out the waste between dovetail pins down to the baseline. And number one, it does that so well and so fast and so perfectly, combined with the fact that for years and years and years, when I was first woodworking, I didn't have a real workbench. I had one of those Workmates, the Black & Decker Workmate with the fold-out legs. Mm-hmm. It had the split top, basically the twin screw vise, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I would clamp down my dovetail boards onto there. And, back in the day, you did what Chris Bexford told you to, which was chop out that waste. And so I would be chopping waste, and this little Workmate would be like bouncing up and down as I'm chopping and I'm chopping. And, and that was, such a horrible experience that every single time I pull out my trim router with the bearing guided bit and zip down the waste between the pins, I'm like, yeah. And I just... expletive, you buddy, thinking about my chisel and chopping. So,
you know what? It's interesting because you mentioned that you're the reason I bought one of those bits.
Oh,
I bought that exact bit because I don't know if it was an article or if it was a video you did or something, and I was watching you do that, and I'm like, I've been chopping this out like a sucker. and I'm like, man, like this is so simple. And I love those little trim routers. I've got 2 or 3 of them. Yeah. And I've got one in a little mini table, and I've got one that's freehand, and then another one that's plunge based.
Oh, with the plunge is awesome. Yes.
Yeah. So I've got like, I bought a Trend back back when, and it looked like the old style laminate trimmers, really tall, sort of narrow body, and then it has a plunge system on it, which is fantastic. But anyway, I haven't had an occasion to clean out dovetails since I got the bit, but I am just so stoked when that happens because I'm like, I love dovetails. I love cutting dovetails. I love the educational component surrounding dovetails, right? You want to teach somebody how to have control with chisels, control with saws, control with anything. You give them a set of dovetails and say, here, cut them by hand.
Yeah.
But like when I cut a dovetail normally, I have a saw guide, and now I'm going to use the router. But I haven't gone to the point where I've got the table saw set up yet.
Yeah.
Mainly because I still kind of enjoy the sawing part, but I like using the guide because then I don't ever have to worry about plumb or straight or whatever,
Yes.
So, but yeah, and there's various like bandsaw methods as well that you can use with like,
sure. Right.
So, but I've definitely, as soon as I saw that rotor bit spin up in your hands, I was like, yep.
Ooh,
that makes sense.
It's a really elegant solution. It really is.
Right.
And I'd been doing that. I'd been using just a normal spiral straight bit to route between the pins for a long time. And it's always this risk reward. It's like, how close do I want to get to the pin wall? How much waste do I want to leave? And it was always this. And then sometimes you go, and you'd jump into that pin a little bit. And then it was, I was at Bob Van Dyke's, and he learned this from Will Neptune. If you know Will, he's just like one of the most brilliant mad scientists of woodworking.
Right.
And Bob said, Will said, just use a bearing guided bit and you don't cut into the pins. It just rides on the pin and it's automatic. It's like, what? And so that's it. So and that's the other thing is I'm up there, unintentionally kind of look away and bump that bit right up against my pins.
Yeah. Take that, you dirty pin socket.
Exactly.
It's funny that you talk about the using just the spiral bit and the fact that, because this is one of those things that like if you don't have to use a router, right? Because a lot of router operations can end that way. Right, with that sound, that
Yes.
And so that reminds me of a story. When I was the resident craftsman at Rosewood, Garrett Hack turned up for a week to teach a class on a demi-lune table. And so I was his shop tech, but Garrett didn't really want a shop tech. He's like, or maybe he just didn't want me, but he's like, you know what, if I need something done, I'll just do it. I don't, he's pretty low maintenance. And so he always brings work with him when he teaches, so that when he has a bit of downtime, he can, work. So he had 4 demi-lune legs for an actual commission with him. And he's going to do his little panel on the inside, like on the leg, right? On the top.
Sure. Yep.
And he says, hey, Vic, can you come here for a sec? I said, yeah, sure. He says, do you use a router? I said, yeah. He says, oh, great. He says, can you route these out as close to the line as you dare?
No.
And I'm like, no. No, I can't. Well, you just told me you know how to use a router. Yeah, on my stuff. I'm not doing it on Garrett Hack's stuff. Are you crazy?
Anyway, so imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I just couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. And then he starts like sort of, gently berating me. Like, well, I said you could use the router. I'm like, don't play this game with me, Garrett. I'm a man. I have pride. I will frig up your work in a second. Anyway, can you imagine asking somebody to do that?
No, especially Garrett. I mean, anybody not me. Even like a student, I'm like deathly afraid of messing up someone's work if I go to it. For Garrett, I probably would have routed maybe like a little inch diameter circle in the middle.
Done.
Stay a good half inch away from that scribe line. Okay, there you go, Garrett. Clean it up.
I had to go for a coffee first. I smoked back then. I probably had 3 or 4 cigarettes before I got to it. And Garrett was like, is it done yet? And I'm like, just let me work up to it, Garrett. Jeez. Anyway,
that's what anytime I watch a lot of inlay work, or I took an inlay class, and it's just like, wait, no, you really just take the router and you go, there's nothing stopping me from just all over the place. Are you kidding me? And yeah, it is a frightening experience sometimes. But with the little Dremel things, they're easy to control. But
apparently, the best thing for that is if you can get your hand on an old dentist drill, because they
are those pneumatic?
Well, I guess, yeah. But the idea is that they spin at like ludicrous speed, right?
Yeah.
And so they don't grab. So you literally just move around and away you go. So, but they're extremely expensive.
Yeah,
even old or used, they're very expensive.
The teacher that I forget his name, he had one, and they were just so unbelievably loud.
Oh yeah,
it was that like, nah, I don't need this in my life.
Right.
Like it was like the loudness of a router coupled with the loudness of pneumatic stuff, and it was just like, nah.
Well, anytime you got to get something spinning that fast, I figure that's, you know what I mean? Like that's going to cause a bit of noise.
And you need a compressor.
Oh yeah, like some serious air coming out of that thing.
Yeah. All right, let's answer some questions.
All right.
Sorry, we kind of went off there. What did
we started
with routers
at the end. We started at the end, and now we're going to work our way back, I think.
All right, let's see. Question number 1 is from Bob, and he just sent this in.
Okay.
And so I don't want anyone to get Bob, don't expect this kind of service every time, because it normally takes a few months for us to get to questions. But I have a question about planes. And for the record, I didn't have time to edit these. So I hear you talking about jack and smoothing planes. You also talk about number 4 and number 5 planes. Sometimes you talk about a number 4 smoother or a number 4 jack. Can you explain the difference between a smoothing plane and a jack plane? Does it have something to do with the way it is sharpened or the way it is set up? Inquiring minds would like to know. So we've got number 4 and number 5. We've got smoother and we've got jack. Can we all agree generally a number 4 is considered in the Stanley numbering system? A number 4 is considered a smoother. A number 5 is considered a jack, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's where you get confusion a lot of times is the 4 plane. Right?
That's
where does
number
that
6.
fit in? Right? Is that a number 6? Is that a jointer? Is that
which is
big
a
jack?
FORE plane.
Right.
I didn't make that correlation. Vic, you're smart.
Well, yeah. Thanks, man.
Oh, so do you think that maybe that's the confusion?
Number 4, because I've
4?
heard a number 6 referred to as a jack as well.
Right.
Well, but I mean, just listening to someone say a 4, maybe they're thinking the number 4 as opposed to the number 6 described
as in B4.
Or as in 4.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't want to encourage golf, Mike. That's people using their discretionary income for something other than woodworking. Yeah.
Well, none of that around here.
But yeah, so the number 4, anything 4.5 and below is a smoother. 5, 5.25, and 5.5 are all jack planes. Okay. And so yes, there is very much a difference in how they are used. At least for me, I sharpen my jack plane blade with a little bit heavier camber. So because it's a little bit more of a workhorse, I want to remove material quickly, or if I can't fit something over my joiner, I want to flatten it really quickly. So I don't want to be there all day. But then my smoothers are generally very little camber, and I'm going to use like just very, very fine shaving. So one is set up kind of like a block plane, like super, super detail fine. And then the other one is more of like an axe with a sole.
So Vic, tell me, do you have just like a single number 4 and a single number 5? Do you have multiples that are set up for slightly different tasks? Like give me your plane setup. Let's just like keep it to like the 4s and 5s ranges.
Right.
Like what have you got there and how do you set those up? And
yeah, so I have like an old Stanley type 13, I think. It's got a hawk iron in it, and that is got a fairly heavy camber in it. Okay. And that's kind of like
for a number 5.
Yeah, it's a number 5. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and then a low angle jack plane mainly for shooting or for correcting an edge or refining an edge that I'm going to glue together or whatever. Okay. And then the smoothers are mainly out of wood, actually, because I really like the sort of wood-on-wood burnishing effect that you get. I don't know how much of that is actually a thing, but in my mind, it does it. Yeah. So then it makes it better.
Which that, in your mind, that counts for something. In my mind,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm not gonna,
yeah. So how do you argue with that? No. But yeah, so and they're generally set up like really like tight mouth, super sharp. Some are really low, like a 37-degree blade presentation, and then others are, go to like 50 or 60. I've got one by H&T Gordon that is kind of unique in that it's already set really high when it's beveled down, but then he says you can flip it over.
Yes.
And then now you've got like a scraping plane, basically.
Because those Australian woods are like...
Yeah, it's bananas. I mean, they're beautiful, but... every time I would go down there, some smart aleck would come up with a chunk of wood, and it's like, here, give this a try. Yeah. And it's like blue gum or something, and it's
yes. I like those woods. They're expensive and they're hard to find, so I just buy a slab of granite from my kitchen counter place, and I just go at it with that, and I think it's about the same. Hand plane it, yeah.
So,
it's true.
Watch this. So, Vic, your smoothing planes, have you ever made one?
Wow, Ben, that's fantastic. I have, in fact. Oh, I haven't even seen this. This is going to be like my first eyes on it in print.
Well, you keep talking for the audio.
Okay, yeah. So, my experience with hand planes, making them, of course, is where a lot of people start making them in North America, and that's the Crenovian style.
Sure.
Because the guy who owned Rosewood at the time studied with Krenov, and so then everybody did the Krenov planes. And I probably made like 4 or 5 of them. Fantastic. I made about 4 or 5 of them, for different angles, different sizes, all that other stuff. For a little while, I sort of bought into that sort of like mystique of the plane. And it's actually interesting. I was just watching an old episode a few episodes ago where, Mike, you had said you realized at one point that the Crenovian plane, there was no magic in the plane. It was just a really sharp blade.
Yes.
And that, so I got to that realization as well, that it's like ultimately what we're surrounding the blade with is some method in which to transport the blade across the wood. That's all that is. So then I started getting into like Japanese planes, pulling tools, and was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Like it feels a little bit more, like I have more control in some cases. And so a friend of mine went to Japan, spent some time learning woodworking over there, because you can take like courses over there that are 2 years long or whatever, and you can do like a full apprenticeship. Wow. Anyway, he did that, and then he came back and he showed me how to make a kana. And so I did it. A
kana is a Japanese plain body, right?
No, that's the die.
Okay.
So I made the die, and then together with blade is the kana.
Okay.
And so I must have made 3 of them and did not have good results. They are extremely difficult to make. The blades are not flat, that they bed, so they're curved, and then you have to curve the bed to match whatever the blacksmith has put on. And then it's all out of one solid piece of wood. So you're basically doing, a 37-degree mortise here, and then 45 from that is your escapement. And then they got to meet in the center. And it's like, no. So, I understand that it can be done and lots of people can do it. That's not what I want to be, right, is a plane maker. And so I don't, So then I started thinking, how do I make a pull plane using things I already know, right? And that's where that article, that's where it sort of came from. So I mishmashed a bunch of different techniques. So the plane is a pull plane. I want to make it clear because I can already hear the zealots kind of ramping up. This is not a Japanese plane, okay? I am not making that claim. This is a plane that you pull. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the end of the similarity to a Japanese plane.
That's only 4 people listening, though, so we're good.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
But
it always seems like there's more. I feel like there's more for some reason. It's like they're louder than everybody else.
Yeah, they can fill up a room, but don't.
Yeah. So you'll get some mail on that one. But anyway, so then what I thought was, okay, I want to pull the plane, but I don't want to have a curved blade. I don't want to do the dressing to the sole, right? Because I've spent my entire woodworking career woodworking with flat-soled planes, and they seem to work okay. Right. I don't win any competitions, mainly because I don't enter plane-making competitions. But I wanted it to be familiar to me. So then the Krenov method comes into mind, very easy way to create your escapement and your bed. And then I took something from sort of like the sort of British style where you have the abutments cut into the side of the cheeks. And so then that allows, I've got it here, and I realize people listening in their podcast, like they can't see it, but like it's actually cut into the sides so that there's no need for a cross pin.
Okay, so the chip breaker, if you will, or what?
The lever
what do you
cap.
Call it?
Lever cap, the wedge.
That's actually working as your cross pin.
That's right. So basically and it's really simple to do because all you're going to do is lay the blade down, make a mark, lay the wedge down. You cut the wedge first, trace it out, and then put the whole thing together, and it just works. And so I was able to create a plane that I pull relatively easily compared to the way you would traditionally do it.
Yeah, so just to kind of back up, so a Japanese style plane, the plane body or the die, it's a solid piece of wood that's excavated for the blade. In the Krenov styles where you take a block, you rip 2 strips off, one off each edge, those become the sides of the plane. That center core, then you can just chop that up super easy,
right?
Glue it back together, and you have basically the same thing. And you're going through the extra task of once it's apart, you're figuring out where to, what'd you call that? An escapement?
The abutment.
The abutment, that little wedge-shaped recess in the sides, you do that at that point.
Right.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was born out of necessity. I wanted a plane I could pull, But when you do a Krenov style one, like depending on how thick, and then Lee Valley or Veritas has the like plain kit that you can use, but it requires you to have much taller wood. Okay. And then now you got to buy material that's 12 quarter to make a plane. Well, that's not very easily done.
Right.
You know, this plane can be done out of 8 quarter or 6 quarter if it's nice and flat already.
Okay. Cool.
So you're using this for smoothing. Have you tried like a jack sized or would you?
Yeah. I'm gonna make another plane. I bought some nice timber to use. I've got some Paduke and something that's referred to as air dried cocobolo, which I was like, how did we get air dried cocobolo into the country? But
don't ask too many questions.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't receive any paperwork with it, so it may have been a bit of marketing, but it's a beautiful piece of cocobolo, and so I'm going to try, kind of making a set. So I'll have a smoother, I'll have a jack that is designed for stock removal, and then I'll have one that's designed for shooting. Because it's incredible how much control you have when you're pulling. You naturally stop, right? Whereas when you're pushing, once you get through the cut, off it goes.
Yeah.
Right. So I've been noticing that with a few tools where I've just been enjoying pulling them instead of pushing them.
I was going to ask you about that because I know that is a big part, the pulling versus pushing. It's a lot about your body positioning and using your major muscles a little differently. Some people like Andrew Hunter, he's like all Japanese planes all the time.
Right.
You're sort of in between. So you're using conventional hand planes, pushing, and then the pulling. Do you see yourself going all to one or you don't mind working both methods into your woodworking techniques?
Yeah, I think that it's a really good question, actually, because I'm kind of going through that in my head right now. I'm always analyzing tools, and it's like, do I use that? Why don't I use it? And I'm always kind of mindful. But I think for jack operations where I'm like going across the grain, or if I'm doing any, and I mean the only time I do that is like my jointer is 10 inches. And how often really am I doing this? Not often. But if I have to remove a lot of material quickly, then that's what I'll do. I'll use the jack plane, the Stanley style one that you push.
Yep.
Because I feel like that operation just is it's just like a bullish sort of push sort of operation.
Yeah.
Whereas smoothing is, I don't know, is it like more tender? I think Paul McCartney once said that when you compose a song on the piano, you're pushing the music out. Huh. Whereas when you compose it on the guitar, he says it's like you're dancing with a woman. You're like, it's more finesse. And so it's like, maybe that's kind of what it's about.
Huh.
Wow. That just went somewhere I didn't expect it to go.
Well, it's just, so using a pull plane is like dancing with somebody you want to dance with.
Okay.
And pushing a plane is a little bit more, it's like football, right? Rugby. It's like, I'm going to end you.
That might be the first time that we've had Paul McCartney quoted on the show. So let's.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a direct quote. I think I read it somewhere that because he was talking about composition and how.
No, it totally makes sense. It
right.
totally makes sense if you have any time between the two instruments. Yeah.
Right.
So, Mike, we've gone on this question for a while, but you use your number 5 differently than most people use a number 5.
Well, which number 5?
Okay. And he sits up.
Yeah. Get comfortable, boys.
My two go-to hand planes are Lee Nielsen bronze number 4 smoother and a Lee Nielsen cast iron number 5. And whenever I'm sharpening, I sharpen both of those in exactly the same way with just a very minimum camber to each blade. They're both set up to be able to take a finished cut.
Right.
So out of the gate, they're the basically duplicates. I can pick up either one and use it as a smoothing plane. Kind of what happens is I tend to do more of the preliminary surfacing with the number 5, and I tend to save the number 4 for final passes or surfaces that really need it. So as I'm going along, the number 5 starts to become and act like a more general purpose tool, especially if it's longer, jointing longer edges. Definitely it'll be the number 5. So it kind of works out there, set up exactly the same, but the number 5 tends to be maybe not quite as sharp, but able to do a lot of the roughing stuff and preliminary smoothing, saving the number 4 for, okay, you're on, come on out, take your passes, go away, that kind of a thing, until the number 5 starts to get a little beat, and then the number 4 starts to take over the general use. And then I've got the 4.5, which I don't like to use very often, but I'll pull that out. And then, then I have a bedrock, a 605. So that's another number 5. Tends to get sharpened a little less often. The throat's a little more open. The camber is a little heavier. So if I'm, busting out drawer bottoms and I don't mind a few scallops, I just want to get rid of machine marks. That'll do that. And then I have just a regular Stanley number 5 with the hawk iron. That just kind of lives in there somewhere, and you never quite. If I have to true an edge of a piece of MDF, if I'm making a jig or something, I've got my MDF plane. Because it planes beautifully, but it's not for very long though.
No,
it sounds silly, but you had mentioned the MDF plane before, and I have a number 4 that I just don't like. I never got along with, and it has become my MDF plywood plane, and I'm happy to have it there. Yeah. And I don't have many planes, but that's one that I consider worth having on the shelf.
When you're making patterns and things like that, I mean, being able to, I would rather hit it a couple times on the hand plane than take it over to a belt sander or something like that, because that's just going to send a plume of that, cancer causing dust into the air. And then, I'm with Mike. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that are going to be like, oh, but it's like,
I've got,
I don't know who said it, but somebody one time was like, you can sharpen these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that.
It's it's going to dull it.
Yeah.
Well, and not only can you sharpen it, but you don't even have to sharpen it to the nth degree like everything else in the shop. You can actually you can stop halfway and just do a 4,000 grit kind of finish.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? That's with my Stanley. I mean, God, it's just short of coming off of a belt sander and then back into the tool, Yeah.
I can't stop myself from taking the blade up to that same level of polish. It's just that I sharpen it far less often. So I think we end up at the same happy meeting place after a while.
Sure.
Yeah, I have 3 or 4 block planes. I've got the Lee Nielsen low angle. That's my primary. I've got the little bronze apron plane from Lee Nielsen, which is a super sweet little plane. I find myself using that more and more. And then another block plane. Again, that's my MDF plane. Really open mouth, pretty. That blade is, ends up getting set pretty deep because, the duller it is, the more, come on, I can get another cut out of this. But
I had a block plane that I would take to lumber yards with me. Because some of the lumber yards wouldn't skip dress their wood, and so in order to you had to get the road dirt off of it to kind of see what you were getting. And so I would have a piece of chalk, I would have a block plane, a tape measure, and my cut list, and I would go and check the grain really quick to see how it looked. And yeah. And that plane was horrible. That was the MDF plane as well, because it was it's getting packed full of dirt, and
it's got road dirt and MDF.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Question number 2 is from Matthew, and we are going to do our best to answer this from the perspective of a woodworker, not a woodworker necessarily creating magazines and videos out of their shops. Mike is giving me the death stare, or frozen. Okay. He's just giving me the death stare.
No, that was the death stare.
I'm in the process of finishing my shop, and I need to figure out how to best create natural light during the short winter days. The space is roughly 20 by 25 with 10-foot ceilings and 2 main working areas. During the day, windows allow for plenty of natural light comfortable for working. Currently, I'm using basic utility lights with daylight bulbs as a way of getting started. I quickly realized that multiple light sources cast unwanted shadows, making marks difficult to see. My question is, what are the best type of overhead lights that can give a similar feel as natural daylight and also an even light? I'm curious about not only bulb temperature, but also the style of fixture, tracks, multiple heads, fluorescent, something that is more direct and movable like an articulating desk lamp. What are we doing for shop lighting, gentlemen?
Vic, you're just setting up your new shop. What are you thinking about in terms of light? Like, what's your ideal lighting situation?
So for those of you who are seeing the video, you can see right now that, or maybe you can't, but I have massive windows right in front of me. And that is, of course, giving you what you're seeing. This is as good as it gets, basically, is what it works out to.
So what we're seeing is...
That's it. This is no hashtag, no filter. Here or here. But if you look behind me, you can see that those lights are really warm. And so the guy who owned this before, he basically installed these light fixtures and they're LED tape on the inside. And so they're LED lighting, which is good, consistent, all those sorts of things, but they're the wrong color, right? Because I have this massive source of 5,000 K coming through the windows.
So right? Sunlight, the color temperature is 5,000, 6,000.
Well, daylight, yeah. Like today's weird because it's cloudy and we've got a lot of snow, so it's really just pumping it in here. But yeah, so I want to replace these lights, and I've already actually ordered them. I don't like the fact that they've got the LED tape in them because you can't change the bulb.
Yeah.
So basically, these fixtures are going to end up getting repurposed somewhere else in the house, the garage, or whatever.
Good luck, because a lot of fixtures are irreplaceable. Yeah. It drives me nuts. Yeah.
Well, the ones I found are like they're $14 each at the depot, and they have 2 light bulb spots. So I'm going to put 2 100-watt equivalents in each one, and then I've got eight fixtures. And so this light to me is this is what prevents me from walking into the fence on the bandsaw.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what this lighting is for. This is just, and a lot of times I don't even turn them on because I'm getting so much light out of here that I don't even need it. What's more critical, in my opinion, is task lighting. Mm-hmm. So yes, my bench faces the window, and I think I got a comment from somebody one time on Instagram saying, "Oh, you're going to hate that because, the light is coming in from there and then it's going to put everything you're seeing into shadow." And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but I use a task light no matter what. So I think the critical part is the task lighting. There is task lighting at every single machine.
Okay.
There is 2 task lights on my bench. There's a task light at my sharpening station. Like anywhere that I need to see better, there's a task light. And it's nothing fancy. It's those ones that you get out of IKEA. They're like $12 for an articulating thing. I have a bucket of parts that, thanks to Ben, are now in a clear container so I can see what's in there. And as things break on them, because they will, they're $14. So I replace springs and all that other stuff. When they become completely unusable, then they get recycled. But I think that that's the most important aspect, is the task lighting. The general lighting, you can make arguments about fluorescent. I don't like fluorescent because the color slips, and then you go from, and it doesn't slip in a good way. And then LED is a little bit more dependable for that. And then, of course, and that's just for woodworking. If I'm doing an article or whatever, then I've got actual like shop lights or like studio lights to do all that kind of stuff. But the idea is, for me personally, is that I want everything the same color.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is driving me crazy. right? Having beautiful daylight coming in here and then this ambered sort of 3000K situation. I just, that's nice in a house when you want a nice cozy room and all that other stuff. But in a shop, it's not my favorite.
If I was a rich man, I would have...
You're not?
I would have two totally separate lighting circuits. Because at night, there are times when I wish I had the 3200K warm light bulbs.
But you can do that. They make switchable ones.
I know they're expensive, and you just have to I would, and also the switchable ones, you give up light output basically.
Right. Yeah.
So I would rather be able to throw an ungodly amount of light when I need it. But there are times when I'm sitting there doing something a little delicate, like finicking with a brace and a uke or something, and it'd just be like, this light is wrong for 10 o'clock at night. I would prefer warmer light, but as it stands, I have everything that I can right now. I have track lighting going around the perimeter of my main work area, and I also have LED panels at the very top of my ceiling. So my roof or my ceiling is a A-frame pretty much, and I have LED panels there. And the track lighting, though, most of the heads I have bouncing back off the ceiling. Because I don't like them on specific things. And so it is more of a wash. I have found that works great for everything. I have a dedicated light on the bandsaw, a dedicated light on the drill press. That's the one where I feel like you really need to have better lighting. I need to do the Vic and get multiple task lights for my bench area, because it's just... you could see my bench area right there with the window washed out, great window. Yeah. At night, I can't see what I'm doing there.
Well, and I think the task lighting becomes more important when you get closer to mine and Mike's age, where...
No idea what you're talking about, Vic.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the gray in that goatee, buddy. That's hard-earned gray, buddy. But yeah, I think that's, what do you like, Mike? Do you do task lighting? Is that an important part for you?
It is. I don't have as much as I would like to. My shop is small. The interior dimensions of my shop is like 18 by 18.
Okay.
But on the ceiling, I've got 9 4-foot long, 4 fixture fluorescent light things. So
how many functioning, Mike?
8.
Okay.
But basically, when they're all fully functioning and I spray the dust off of the covers, it's a ceiling of light. Plus, all my walls are painted white. I have a white ceiling, so there's a lot of reflected light there. The idea for me is that after living in a shop with black cinder block walls and open rafters and 3 fluorescent fixtures where the light would just get sucked into the black hole.
The abyss.
To me, that was just like, I wanted as much light as possible. So I would say when I first got them and everything was super bright, I really didn't need task lighting, but it's nice to have. I like it at the bandsaw and at my bench too. Sometimes, if the light is weird for dovetails or marking, you just need a little extra. And to your point, age-wise, more light. I mean, the 2 biggest factors, like in my dovetailing performance, is the first one is when I actually put some reading glasses on to cut dovetails. All of a sudden, I was no longer depressed about having to wear reading glasses because, no, this is just a tool. And all of a sudden, man, I can see right there. And then I was at Bob Van Dyke's teaching at Connecticut Valley School of Woodworking, and we were doing this little kind of jewelry box with a bunch of little tiny drawers and dovetails. And my dovetails were just horrible. Even with my reading glasses, man, I'm losing it. Maybe I'm rushing. And then I went and grabbed a task light because he's got 20-foot high ceilings with, fluorescence way up high. And I got a task light and I put it right there. All of a sudden my dovetails improved. It's because even without knowing you're not seeing, you can not see well enough. So I think it's a combination, get as much light as you can and then task lighting wherever you can get it. And like you said, if it's like, well, what if I can't get, a bank of fluorescents, lighting up the neighborhood? Task lighting is probably more important than, a ton of evenly lit space, because that's going to put the light exactly where you need it. And in terms of this, I wouldn't worry about replicating natural light with your electric lights. I think it's two different things. I think you want even lighting with as less unfortunate cast shadows as you can get, and then combine with task lighting to get the light where you want. And then the sun comes up and you're working in your natural light with your windows, and that's a glorious thing. And make sure you get all of your Instagram pictures with the light coming in from the windows, and shut off the fluorescence and call it good.
When we take the dog out to do his business at the end of the day and it's nighttime out, I wear one of these little camping, the hiking light, you know what I mean? Just so that I can see what's going on. We have a lot of wildlife back here. So what I don't need him doing is tearing off after a skunk. So I kind of do like a quick reconnaissance, make sure there's nothing that's going to stink. And then we take them out. And I've always thought like this one that I have, it has like headlights basically that are very focused, sort of like spotlighting, but then you can hit the button again and it gives you this sort of soft diffuse light. And I always have thought like, I wonder if you could put that on, and then as you're dovetailing, because when you look down, it points itself at that, and they're fairly comfortable to wear.
I'm trying. I've seen somebody do it. I'm trying to remember who, and their whole perspective was like, screw it. Who am I trying to impress? I don't mind walking around my shop with a headlamp on. And
Linda Manzer uses the magnification glasses, and they have lights built into them. And so when she's working on something very detail oriented, now she can see, and she's got like wicked light going at it. Yeah. So I'm going to try it out, and I'll let you guys know how it goes. But
try it out. Let me know, because I was just sort of thinking the same thing. And I've had a student or two in the past wear those as they're working. Of course, then they look up at you to ask a question and you're blinded. But
you're grabbing all the sun.
Yes. So try it out, Vic. Let me know.
I think task lighting is key. Everything else is just prevents you from tripping over stuff.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. This episode is sponsored by Maverick Abrasives. Maverick is a family-run company that's been making sanding belts and discs for woodworkers in the USA for 30 years. With Maverick, you're buying factory direct, so you're likely to save a lot of money. I just looked around my shop at the various abrasives that I use, and I did the math. If I bought everything directly from Maverick, I would save around 40% on my sanding discs and belts. Maverick has all of the popular size belts and discs in stock on their website, but they can also make any custom sizes that you might need. Check out their website at maverickabrasives.com or give one of their owners, Garrett, a call at 714-646-3299 and use the code FINEWOODWORKING. That's one word, FINEWOODWORKING, for 10% off your order. Again, that's maverickabrasives.com and the code is FINEWOODWORKING.
Hey, Shop Talk Live fans. Take a deeper dive into woodworking topics when you join the Fine Woodworking Unlimited community. From in-depth project guides, step-by-step plans, tips, and techniques, you'll find everything you need to master your craft. Try Unlimited now and enjoy a 14-day free trial. Find out more at finewoodworking.com/members.
So let's do our little segment.
Okay.
We've got a lot here. I don't know how I'm going to put this episode together.
Well, it might be the first 3.5 hour episode. I don't know.
Oh, we'll see. All right. Mike, you actually, for the first time ever in the history of the world, want to go first. I don't know what this is
weird.
Foreshadowing.
My bit is favorite question for Vic Teslin of all time for this week, which is, what's up with the saw guides?
With the saw guide?
You're using a guide when you're sawing.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Dude. Yeah.
Would you like more?
I wasn't ready for that.
It's sort of like, it's like the new honing guide conversation where it used to be, oh, don't use a honing guide, you're a wimp, you got to do it by hand. And now like honing guides are like, no, use a honing guide because they work in the get you shop, end of story. And now it's sort of like, in my classes, I would say there may be one student per class will come in, because dovetails and hand techniques is a big part of what I do. And they'll say, well, hey, I have a saw guide. Do you mind if I use this? And they're always a little bit sheepish to ask. It's sort of like it's the new, is this cheating or not technique? And
I love that, cheating.
Yeah, I tend to recommend against it myself only because I think it's like it's not a skill that's difficult to pick up. And then there are other factors involved, but I'm always really interested to hear folks, like when you said, oh, and I pull out my saw guide, I got super excited because I want to hear from someone who's a really accomplished woodworker who is also an advocate for using the saw guide. So these are basically, it's some sort of a guide you hold on the wood and it allows you to orient your saw in a vertical manner and I guess on a line as well as you cut.
Right. So, somewhere along the line, the word jig and hand tool in the same sentence became a no-no. Mm-hmm. And I was taught with jigs. I mean, I have this, and again, I apologize for those who are listening audio only, but this is my shoulder pairing jig. It's just a piece of walnut that I put on the side of the dovetail, clamp it in, and then I put the chisel across the top, and that guarantees a nice, crisp, clean shoulder. I've been using that since I studied at Rosewood, right? If you look back in history, back when we only had hand tools, there were all kinds of jigs and fixtures and guides and, like imagine doing kumiko without a set of guides.
Right.
Good Lord, it'd be horrible.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, we got it into our head that in order to be a good or authentic or whatever adjective you want, you had to like do everything without the aid of any sort of guides. And there is an incredible amount of information that you gain by learning how to cut dovetails by hand, no guides. Right. And we touched on that a little bit earlier, where it's like, you learn how to control a chisel, you learn how to control a saw, you learn how to saw to depth, you learn how to saw to a line. Once you've learned those lessons, right, I think that there's no reason why when you're building a piece that you can't move on. Right. And so, I did a blog for you guys for Fine Woodworking talking about this presumption of authenticity that, if you were to use a domino instead of a mortise and tenon, all of a sudden your piece is not authentic. Like, what the hell does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just I think it's easy to sort of stand on a soapbox and say, oh, you don't do it by hand? Oh, I see. So... But I don't care about that because I've never really cared about what people thought. So for me, I enjoy adding dovetails to my work, but I don't like the time that it takes to hand cut every single dovetail, right? When I add a guide, one of the things that people always screw up, and Mike, you've taught dovetails 100,000 times, so you know as well, the thing that people screw up is the plumb of the cut on the pin.
Yes.
Right. And then also the squareness from front to the two surfaces on the tail.
Absolutely. Right.
Because then when you transfer, right, it turns into a dog's breakfast and then you're pairing and then you're everything else.
Yes.
And just split a board when you hammer them together.
Exactly. And so I find I've been a big believer in that, like set somebody up for success. Right. So I remember when I studied at Rosewood, when the first owner was insistent on learning how to sharpen by hand. And okay, great. So we won't get into that whole, quagmire. But sometimes you would get a student who just didn't have that natural acuity, right? Because it requires a certain natural acuity to sharpen by hand. And they would go the whole week without truly getting a good edge.
Yes.
And then they would spend the rest of that week struggling, right? Then when Ron Barter took over, he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to show people how to use a Mark II honing guide, right? We'll show them how to grind. They can do their primaries on that and then secondary on the jig. That morning, people had wicked sharp tools.
Yeah.
And now they've moved on, right? Did they miss anything struggling for a year trying to learn how to sharpen by hand? Nope. They didn't miss anything at all, because I mean, all that is just toil.
Yeah.
And there's no need to toil, especially if it's a hobby, right? Like, I mean, people want to get stuff done. So when I do a dovetail, like, I teach people both ways. Like, I actually have a webinar that is set up specifically to show people how to use a jig, right? And that is completely different than when you do it by hand, right? When you do it with a jig, you can actually mark both halves of the joint at the same time. You can put the jig up against those lines, boom, 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 cut your tails, cut your pins, boom, they go together, right? It's a totally different scenario as opposed to cut the tails, refine them, transfer them, cut the pins, fit them, right? Because there's always these little allowances that you have to make. Now, I'm not suggesting one is better than the other by any stretch of the imagination, right? There are going to be people who want to cut them completely by hand. Great. But I don't think that anything is less authentic, right? When I saw, Mike, your video using like we said earlier, using the router bit to clean out the pins. Well, is that authentic? Sure it is. And then when you have a blade for a table saw that is specifically ground to give you the exact angle, it's like, I looked at that and I went, the next time I order saw blades, I'm going to get one made like that.
No.
Because I'm going to try that. That is cool, right? Because my goal, I don't want to say, well, I cut those dovetails by hand. That's not what I care about. Right. I want somebody to look at my furniture and say, oh, that's a neat piece.
Yeah.
Oh, you did dovetails. Ever cool. Like, and it's got to make sense, right? Like, we also have, like, and I'm not picking on a brand or anything, but the Lee style jigs, you know, for the router, right? Which is great for kitchens and stuff like that. If you have to dovetail an entire kitchen worth of drawers, then by all means do that.
Oh, yeah.
But whenever a tool comes with an instructional DVD, you know it's going to be a nuisance to set up. Your method at the table saw is not a nuisance to set up.
Right.
And it's quick and it's easy and it lets you get to the next part, which is to put that drawer box together or to put those gables together and create your cabinet and all that other stuff. So I don't know where it comes from, where we are disparaging towards others about, you know, using a jig or in general being disparaging towards each other for whatever technique we choose to do.
Sure.
I mean, who cares? Do what you do.
And as long as you're enjoying your time in the shop, and when you finish a thing, you don't feel like you wasted your time or your money or whatever. And I've actually come to terms with, you know what? About 30% of the time out here, I'm making little doodads to hold other little doodads because I like a stupidly organized shop.
Sure.
And like, I was talking to my wife, I was going, oh, you know, I've got those All-It bins from the little holders, and there's the 2x2 blue ones that I don't use in the drawers. And so I designed and 3D printed a little holder to go on top of that so I could stack them perfectly. And I was like, I can't believe I'm spending so much time doing this. She goes, you're having fun, right? And I was like, yeah, I am. I'm having fun organizing my shop. And this is supposed to be a place for me to have fun, really. Like, but I'm not selling woodwork. You know, I'm not making a living doing this. I'm having fun. And when I cut dovetails, I struggle because I cut dovetails once a year.
Right.
Or twice a year. And it's like, yeah, I can build up the technique. Absolutely. And 6 months later, it's gone. You know, I don't have the muscle memory.
It's why I don't use SketchUp. I learned how to do something in SketchUp, and then I go to do something like 3 months later, and it's like, I don't even know where to start.
No, start from scratch. Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
and then I'm listening to some boring DVD. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, you know, I can't do it. I can't. I understand how it could benefit me, but
You gotta enjoy your time.
Right. That's what it boils down to. And I mean, if you're not having fun out in the shop and you're not enjoying the process, then why are you even there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that ties in a lot to your philosophy in your book, which is primarily hand woodworking, but it's not philosophically hand tool only. You know, you're not putting that on a pedestal. You're saying, look, machines are great. They can do a lot, but they're not necessary if you want to get started. So don't see them as a stumbling block. You can get by really well without them. If you want to include them, they can do a lot of heavy lifting for you, and that's great. But let me go and show you how to do stuff with just hand tools. And if that's why you're in the game, that's great. And if it's because you don't have any other methods, but you want to get something done, that's great too. So I appreciate that sort of open-minded approach to the craft. And I think it's super important. And I think, you know, like you said, really dialing into a specific philosophy and then selling that as the only way to do something, that's just, I don't buy that.
There's enough dogma, right?
Yes.
Surrounding us.
Right.
We don't need more. We don't need it in our craft. We don't need it. We don't need to be, we need to be inclusive in our craft, right? We need to be able to understand that not everybody can have a fully equipped, awesome shop, right? Some people can just afford, you know, a small amount of tools and a workbench made out of 2x12s, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that, because if that gives them even an inkling of the feeling I get when I'm in my shop, then that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Don't apologize if you don't have a table saw. Then again, don't apologize if you do have a table saw.
Right.
You know, it's
True. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, I have a Panta router, right? Like a lot of people see that as excessive, and maybe it is, but it's fun and I like it, and I like how it works. I think it's funky. I think the guy who invented that is a genius, and it just is, and so I think it's cool. Do you need one to woodwork? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Wow. I think that does it.
That's it. We're done.
Well, I mean, we've really covered an awful lot, and we've gone for an hour and 10. So,
wow, right.
You guys, are you going to feel put out if Vic, do you want to give us your all time favorite or something, or?
Well, I didn't really have an all time favorite. Okay. My all time favorite thing to recommend to people is to just don't. And we've kind of danced around it a lot. It's just like don't get too wrapped up about things. You know, just go out and have some fun.
Yeah.
And build stuff. And don't think that you need to be, you know, Ben Strano or Mike Pekovich. You don't have to be those people. You don't have to do what they do. Right? Like, and I see you making faces over there, Ben, but, you know, don't sell yourself short. You know, it's like that episode. It was the one I was watching recently where Anissa called herself a beginner.
Yes.
Yeah, like, you know what though? I love the mentality of like anyone who considers himself like whenever I hear master craftsman or master,
it makes me a little like, cringy.
Oh, like I know somebody in promo wrote that, but you don't consider yourself a master, right?
Well, and if someone promotes me that way, I say no, take that out. That is not what I am.
Yeah.
No, that we don't have a guild system. Nobody bestowed that title on me. I do not bestow it on myself. I don't even call myself a good woodworker. I let other people say, yeah, I think you're a good woodworker. Okay, great. That's your own delusion, but, you know, not.
That's why I consider myself a professional hobbyist woodworker.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
I get paid to be a hobbyist.
Yeah. And I think Anissa is an incredible woodworker. Like, I think she does really neat stuff, and she's really smart, and she, you know, and the joke is that she always does the
smooth move.
Smooth move.
Because she's out there trying stuff.
Exactly. And I guarantee that Mike and I and Ben have the same number of smooth moves, right? We just move past them quicker or don't worry about them as much or whatever. But we all have those moments where you look at something that you just did and you're like, what? Why did I do that? You know, so I think my I just want people to just enjoy themselves and don't try to be anything. Don't try to be anyone. Don't try to emulate anything. Just, if Mike Pekovich does something that you think is cool, go and try it. You know what I mean? I bought that router bit because I'm going to try it because, man, that's awesome. And, I want to build an instrument. And so I watch, Ben putting these things together and, and that, to me, that's inspiring because Ben, you don't call yourself an instrument maker.
No.
Because you're learning and but I mean, there was a lady on Instagram who she had she's got 2,000 followers or something. She's just starting out woodworking. She's in her garage and all that other stuff. And she showed the exact same thickness sander that I have, but she modified the base for storage. And I'm like, that's cool. Yeah. And so I tagged her and said, hey, thanks for the cool idea. I've got that exact same thing. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
we can learn from so many people and just don't stop learning. Keep learning.
Well, I have a random recommendation. We're going to finish this up. I have a random recommendation. I have the Lee Nielsen honing guide. I love it to pieces, except I hate the fact that I have to use my biggest flathead screwdriver to tighten it and unloosen it and loosen it. And it just bothers me. And even though their little honing guide screwdriver is priced really nicely for what it is, just can't bring myself to have a screwdriver for one tool. Well, I took a 3/16 inch fender washer to the grinder and flattened a fender washer, and it fits in there perfectly. And that's what I use to tighten and loosen my Lee Nielsen honing guide. Sorry, Tom Lee Nielsen, but you don't get my $20. Mike, do you have any randoms?
Yeah, if you're part of the Instagram woodworking community, Wood Shrew, she's an awesome woodworker in Oregon who built her own yurt, which is cool enough, but it was just pretty much destroyed in an ice storm that they just had, and it got leveled by pine trees. So she's got a little GoFundMe thing on her page to help pay for her yurt. So if you're interested, check out Wood Shrew's page on Instagram.
All right, Vic, do you have a random recommendation? I know you do.
Yeah. Go to woodyak.ca. This is a little bit shameless, and I apologize if it's construed that way, but I got so sick and tired of there not being a woodworking conference to go to. I used to love going to the one that you guys did. And so there's a lot of cool technologies out there that are allowing conferences to happen remotely. And so me and my buddy Steve Durgarabidian,
That's how you say it.
Yeah, Durgarabidian. Yeah. Yeah. He's a good friend of mine. We live right up the road from each other, and he just released a book as well on veneering, which is kind of cool. But we got to talking. We thought, how cool would it be if we could get some speakers together and just put on a one-day event? You go, you can attend, you can watch live, or you can do it after the fact, because it's recorded. Anyway, I think it's gonna be a cool event. I don't know. I don't think anything like this has been done, so it could just, completely capsize. But and 2 out of 3 of us here will be there speaking. So
I will be. It's priced right as well, and I think I've got a ticket to give away. I'll be doing on Instagram soon.
Right.
So,
and if it's a raging success, then I'm going to go to the A-listers, Mike. Sorry, man. We were poking fun at you about the book. I got to poke fun at Ben, too.
Well, Mike, did you just reframe your picture to get your cat in?
I did.
Okay, good. Because
the
lighting is great on the cat right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the cat's name?
Belle.
Belle.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful cat. I love it,
sweetie. Yes.
All right. On that note, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer, this is the radio voice you like, Vic, right?
Yeah.
If you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thank you for listening.
And I'm Ben Strano.
If you love this podcast, you'll love Fine Woodworking Unlimited. Access more than 40 years of articles, how-to videos, and project plans designed to take your craft to the next level. Check it out.